Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the Quintessential Quintuplets anime seasons 1, 2, and the movie. And I overall enjoyed this series, though I did mainly have some issues in regards to mainly more execution and some of the things that they chose to kind of focus on. I do like the central premise that we have our main character, Futaro, who is a very studious student, but is poor and is pretty much hooked up with the quintuplets to get their grades up. And then, of course, the hijinks ensue. Now, granted, there are funny things, but it's focused more kind of seriousness of getting their grades up and the relationships that kind of come out with this. Granted, the seasons focus mostly on his relationships with Miku, Nino, and Ichika. And Itsuki and Yotsuba are kind of left more in the backside, if that makes sense, in the background. Itsuki is the one that kind of gets him more introduced to like their whole kind of concept, because he's the first one. Well, they're technically not the first one, but like when we kind of get introduced to their whole kind of story, she's our kind of point into it. And then the movie kind of deals with like the whole kind of central conceit. It's almost like How I Met Your Mother, where we get Futaro on the day of his wedding, remembering how he's kind of dealt with which one of the ones that he's going to marry. Now, I overall don't mind that kind of concept. It just gets bogged down in the execution, where the seasons focus on three of the main sisters and the kind of things that start kind of ratcheting into their relationships because of this whole thing. And then the movie has to do a lot of legwork where it's like 2 hours, and I almost rather would have had them do a season, because we get to his choice and it's mainly at the end, and it's kind of like the character that's least done for like the romantic kind of relationship. The best I could kind of compare it to is if you've played Persona 5 and you get Haru introduced at the end, pretty much the tail end of the game, you don't really have as much time to go out with her with social links and everything and get her as a really good, you have less time to get her up to speed with like a romantic kind of pairing in there, because of, you don't really have that much time left. Here, you kind of fall into the same trap. Now, does it completely and utterly derail it and make it completely and utterly crap? No. We still get strong character work. Each of the quintuplets has their own kind of flavor and personality, so you don't just get a bland kind of thing of like, oh, this is the tsundere, this one's the quiet one. Though granted, there is the tsundere one and the quiet one, which are incidentally enough fighting as well. But it's better than just the cardboard stereotype. There's more to them, as we see Futaro kind of trying to figure out what's kind of going on with them, and we get his motivations for why he's trying to be studious as well. So we see that at the beginning, Futaro was not the best kind of student. We see him on this field trip to Kyoto, and he's kind of more punkish, taking pictures everywhere, before he gets introduced to Rena, who we find out is actually one of the quintuplets. And he pretty much spent the day, and that he was pretty much trying to become a better student for this person. Also, a kind of weird, jarring thing, before I get to it, before I continue further, is that there's a weird eye change color that happens with Futaro between Season 1 and Season 2. I didn't know if there was a reason for it, but I was like, what the fuck? But other than that strange color changing, the animation for this is like top notch. Like, honestly, it just is a really beautiful anime. It's just the execution of certain story elements just like, what? Especially when we get to the movie. So we see throughout the 2 seasons him pretty much going through this, him learning about the whole stuff with the quintuplets, learning that they didn't start out being rich, that her mother was, their mother was a single mother, she was a teacher, which then factors into some weird fucking shit in the movie, and that she remarried, and their father's kind of like a rich doctor who's pretty much kind of cold and distant. Futaro does call him out for this kind of stuff. But the main kind of stuff is getting into each of the characters. Miku being the quiet one, who's really into like warlords and shit, and he like latches onto that and really kind of gets her pumped up. Nino is more of the kind of like, he's a jerk, but she's in she's into the old school kind of look, which leads to the whole situation of Futaro dressing up kind of like himself and calling himself a cousin at this whole kind of ski thing, and Nino really gets into that, but seeing the whole thing kind of unravel out, they have their kind of friction on that, but then she is the first one to confess her love for him, which is kind of interesting. But we see that Ichika also has feelings for him as well, and Miku as well, and then they're kind of fighting each other, and Ichika is the one that's kind of like the down and dirty kind of one. Nino says that she's gonna like steamroll other people, but Ichika really gets into like gnarly kind of play and really kind of fucking over Miku, and it's like, oh god, what the fuck's pretty much dressing up as Miku, saying this, that, and the other, and pretty much trying to get herself together with Futaro. We also get some things going on as the girls try and get better grades, but then the relationship stuff kind of takes more of the focus as well. I kind of wanted more of a kind of balancing, because I wanted to see Futaro actually teaching them kind of things and understanding what's kind of going on with it. Now granted, that's probably not the story that they wanted to tell, which I'm kind of fine with, that they focus more on the relationship kind of aspects, but it kind of like starts to kind of tilt on the execution, where sometimes it's like, hey, they still need to do stuff with these tests and everything. It's like, okay, bring that in, as we're dealing with the three main ones kind of fighting it out. They also, the father is like not as pleased with their kind of progress, and we get into tension with there, and the girls decide to move out briefly before the place gets condemned, and they pretty much go back with the father. I kind of get it, and I don't mind that they went that route, but the thing is, we pretty much have 12 episodes in the first season, 12 episodes in the second season, and then we have the movie to kind of round it out, and I do know that they're doing another movie for like the honeymoon period, but we'll kind of see how that works out. Let's see. Then, we pretty much get them to go into Kyoto again. This is where we pretty much get them kind of just oddly kind of ending it. We get the hatchet kind of buried between all of the characters, and they're still kind of trying to figure out who's going to be the bride, and that's where we pretty much get it answered in the movie. The movie does some weird fucking shit. Honestly, not anything that kills it for me. We're pretty much having to balance this and this kind of school festival, and then going through each of the quintuplets before we get onto the one that Futaro chooses with Yotsuba. And Yotsuba is the last one that really gets any kind of attention in the movie as well as in the show. Like, we don't really have much that's done with her, except that she's kind of shown no interest in Futaro, and that we just see her as someone helping out and everything, and it almost feels like a aha. But we do get enough kind of groundwork laid within the movie to make her a viable choice. It's just, I wish that they had spent more time doing that, so that way it felt more impactful. It's like, oh, okay, he decided to go with her. And I'm not saying that Yotsuba is a bad one or a bad pick. It's just how they executed it and got us to that point severely hampered that kind of reveal for me. And I just wanted it to be done better, because Yotsuba deserved better as a character. It's like, okay, because at this point we've done most of the legwork on Miku, Nino, and Ichika. And since we had pretty much had Miku at the beginning, that was the one that I was pretty much gravitating towards as the one he would most likely probably pick. Nino being pretty much the next kind of one. Ichika not really, because of how she's been handling everything. Itsuki kind of gets completely just left off to be hunger teacher woman, which is kind of odd. Like, I wish they had put a little bit... If you're doing a thing, try and make all of them as viable as possible as a pick, so that way you're really invested with his like decision process and everything. Never mind the fact that the movie then also introduces some weirdness of like their biological father popping up, who's evidently the teacher of their mother, their stepfather, and Futaro's father. Homeroom teacher. It was really kind of strange, because in the anime portions in the seasons, we didn't get really kind of any indication that their parents had any kind of relationship. And I don't even really mean that they had like a big, hefty relationship. I'm like, you all knew each other? Why the fuck is this happening? I mean, I don't mind them pretty much sticking it to their bio dad who's like, fuck you, asshole. Why are you coming around doing this shit? But it just was an odd thing where it's like, okay, we have a certain amount of time. We've got characters that need time and attention. I really didn't need this added here. It really doesn't add much to it other than to pretty much cement Itsuki being a teacher, even though she's having a harder and rougher time going through it. And she already had that kind of worked out because she had met up with one of her mother's former students and kind of had that thing kind of going because she was a worker that worked at a cram school. It's like, oh, okay. Then, of course, we got the whole jealousy kind of thing popping up as the one girl that was with Futuro on the 6th grade Kyoto trip pops back up during the whole festival kind of thing. It's like, okay. So there were just mainly some elements that were put into play that I think would have been better utilized in really setting up Yotsuba as the one that he picked, and that they get married. They play the Quint game where they all dress up pretty much the same, but Futaro is able to pick them all out. There was a nice little thing as he pretty much worked with the grandfather during this kind of spring break thing where he's like, it's love. I can tell them apart because of love, and Futaro loves all of them, so he knows all their differences and personalities and everything. So it's like, oh, okay, that's nice. And it's cool that they're all still friends and everything, because normally this would probably rip some shit apart and everything. But it's nice to go into the future, see the whole kind of wedding kind of go down before they start pretty much planning the honeymoon trip, which evidently was similarities to their graduation trip. I mean, honestly, I enjoyed it for the central kind of premise and the kind of hijinks that ensued. It didn't get too strange or weird. I mean, it followed certain kind of anime tropes and whatnot, but it didn't go completely where I'm like, I'm bored of this, that's the only trope that's kind of going on. It was interesting to see how Futaro would put people above himself, taking care of his sister and getting sick and kind of spreading it to one of the other Quints. Trying to figure out what's kind of going on, being supportive of Ichika, doing her acting career and all that. I just liked the characters in the world pretty much, and I just wanted them to kind of work a little bit better on tweaking certain kind of things to make certain things work a little bit better. Otherwise, like, I would still recommend this if you're, like, looking for a rom-com kind of thing to go on, slice of life, without any really high stakes or completely weird sexual kind of things going on, or complete, like, insanity with violence. This doesn't really have anything like that. It's got your typical, normal, Ichi kind of stuff going in, where some people see other people in the bathroom or whatnot, and dealing with all that kind of shit as well. So it's your normal, typical kind of things that aren't really kind of nutty doo-dah, but keep those in mind when you're if you're trying to figure out if you want to kind of watch this. Even though the movie was, I think that the movie was a little bit long, it was still kind of enjoyable to see how they kind of worked through the whole kind of festival and getting everything kind of in order. So yeah, I would definitely recommend these, seeing them on since they're on Netflix at the moment. That's where I watched it. Yeah, I'd recommend it. The animation's beautiful. That's what I would really top tier. And then I'm good with like that balance with the story and the characters. I think people would have an enjoyable time with this. So those are my opinions on the seasons and the movie. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.